Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar entitled From Pain to Power, How Cold Water Can Support Chronic Pain Management. I'm Coach Hélène with The Coolest Journey, and I am thrilled about presenting this because cold water has been a huge part of my life for the last 5.5 years now. And without it, my pain would not be where it is. I can easily go down to about 3 to 6 on a pain scale of 1 to 10, just thanks to the cold water exposure. So I hope that this webinar will perhaps help some of you get into this practice, or at least give you some ideas. I know that cold is not for everyone, so bear with me. Now, who is this webinar for? Those living with chronic pain. So for people supporting those who are living with chronic pain, anyone who's looking for evidence-informed guidance and real-world experience about chronic pain management and cold water exposure. So I've been doing the cold water exposure since fall of 2020, but I've been dealing with chronic pain for decades, and it got a lot worse in 2014 following a car accident. So I had chronic pain, I had migraines, a lot of things escalated, and I ended up with anxiety, PTSD, depression, a whole range of issues that pretty much cold water solved in many ways, and or helped me manage better. And this is also for anyone who's curious about, and this is really too bad, but it's one of the rarely mentioned life-changing benefits of cold water is how it can help with pain and chronic pain. So that's who this webinar is for. And the takeaways that I'm hoping you're going to get out of this webinar is what a chronic pain management program can look like, how cold can modulate the pain signaling, who can benefit from cold exposure, how to begin a cold exposure practice, how to begin a cold water swimming practice, and how you can become the CEO of your own health. So the outline for today, we're going to start with what is pain, basically, and how can we actually modulate this pain response? I'll give you some resources who can benefit from cold exposure, what is cold water, effects of cold water on the endocrine system, differences between cold water dipping and cold water swimming, if you were interested in going to that space, why cold water swimming is the one that I really, really promote. Cold water exposure practice, common mistakes to avoid, a chronic pain management blueprint to customize, and then we'll finish. I'll just mention what else I can offer as part of my services as with my newly launched business, The Coolest Journey. And then I'll stop the recording and we will go to open Q&A. Now, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat as we go along. So if you have any questions that you have as I'm presenting, please do put them in the chat. I will do my best to keep an eye on it and address them as I go along. Otherwise, we'll talk about them in the open Q&A. So who am I? Well, I'm a coach. I have been a lifeguard. I have been a water fitness instructor, a Pilates instructor or fusion instructor. I also did some spinning instructing. I'm a personal trainer. ISA Level 1 Observer, which is International Ice Swimming Association. I've taught over 1,000 people to swim. I've coached swimming. I've done a lot of things in my life. But in 2014, when I had a car accident, everything pretty much stopped. And at that point, I was doing trail running. I was doing dancing. I was also teaching. Everything stopped. And it was only in 2020, so 6.5 years later, that I started to get my life back thanks to cold water swimming. So in that period of time, I had over 350 migraines, each migraine lasting 24 hours. It was pretty bad. I lost 2 years of my life pretty much lying down in the darkness. So here's why I'm talking about this, because I've lived through so much pain that I hate seeing others in pain when I know that we have options that are easy to implement. Many times they are free and we're not necessarily told about them. So I launched the Coolest Journey in 2025 so that I can improve the lives of over 10,000 people by 2035 to help them break the cycle of physical pain, reignite their inner fire, and reclaim their lives so that they can live some adventures. And so all these free seminars that I offer are meant to spread awareness about the benefits of safe cold water exposure. Combined with an anti-inflammatory diet and energy therapies, they do wonders. But even just the cold water exposure alone can bring wonders to your life. And I invite you to check other events that I organize on thecoolestjourney.com. So what is pain? Well, believe it or not, which is something that I always found a little bit strange when I was going to the pain management clinic, I was told, well, actually, we don't really know what pain is. So scientists are agreeing to disagree on what actually is pain. Basically, it's subjective. So there's a difference between injury and pain. We can have an injury and no pain, and we can have pain and no injury. So let that sit for a little bit. We can have pain and no injury. That's usually chronic pain. So what happens is that we have these sensors on our skin, and they're called nociceptors, and they detect something that is potentially harmful to us, the stimulus. So it could be something hot, something cold, so thermal, maybe it's pressure, maybe it's chemicals, and then they send some electric signal. They don't send pain signal, they send electric signals through the spinal cord that goes into the brain. And then the brain decides if the signal is painful or not. And then basically the pain that we feel, that's a construction from the nervous system that is happening at the head level. I hated being told when I was going to see the doctors, oh, the pain is in your head. Well, in a way, I guess they were right, but not in the way that they meant that they were intending for me. But basically, it's a nervous system dysregulation. So pain is physical and it's also emotional. Actually, just recently, I was asked to make sure that when I'm tracking my pain, to make sure I also track the emotions that I was feeling just before the pain started. So there's some emotional component to the pain. Pain is useful and protective when it is an acute pain. But when we're talking about chronic pain, when the injury itself, the source itself is no longer there, then pain is a real pain. Acute pain versus chronic pain. Well, acute pain is the normal signal for protecting our body, right? It's self-protection. So as I mentioned, the nociceptors will send a signal, electric signal, to the spinal cord, which goes to the brain, and then the brain says, oh, there's an experience of pain. So it's protection against the immediate injury and threat. It's usually short-term, and we're talking about damage to the structure. So it could be bones, tissue, soft tissues, right? It's inflammation. It's something that's happening, and it's right here, right then. Like touching a hot surface, we get the signal of pain, remove the hand. Chronic pain is anything, now the jury is also out on this. It could be over 3 months, it could be even over 4 months, but basically it's usually acute pain that is not necessarily well managed, or where the electric signal from those nociceptors through the spinal cord, there's like that pain highway that's been established from the acute pain, and then it transfers itself into chronic pain. So there's something to be said about managing the pain, the acute pain, so that it does not transform itself into chronic pain. So the chronic pain often that we have, the source of the problem is long gone, and yet we keep going, no, I'm feeling this pain, like I'm not imagining it, and you are not imagining it. I wasn't imagining it for sure. And if we think about it, you may have heard the expression, neurons that fire together wire together, meaning you can create neuroplasticity in the brain, right? New ways of thinking, new things that you're doing. Your brain will adapt. Well, it's the same thing with the whole body as well. There's this neuroplasticity of the body. So it's usually a question of interrupting these electric signals. One thing I'm going to mention right now, because I know it's not in the slides, so I don't want to forget. When I was at the pain clinic, and that's when I was in Ontario, I used to get these, they're called trigger point injections. So it's a freezing agent, something like what the dentist would be using, and it's injected in specific pain points. It's just under the skin, exactly so that those nociceptors can be dulled. And so that's one way of stopping that electric signal. But there are other ways, much better than having to go to a clinic and getting these injections done. Because believe me, I went for about 4 to 5 years to the clinic once or twice a week to get those injections done. And it's no fun. Modulating pain response. So that highway of electric signaling that we're trying to stop. So it's there for acute pain, and that's a good thing. But when it becomes chronic, that's when we want to stop it, right? So there's the physiological way of stopping it. So other ways than trigger point injections would be through cold and through vibration, especially when they're combined together. And I don't know Amy Baxter personally. I'm not here to promote her product, but she has a TED Talk about, and she talks about how to modulate pain. And she mentions the product that she developed called Buzzy. And it's exactly this. It combines cold and vibration in order to reduce this pain response or completely eliminate it. And this is both for acute and chronic pain. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. The cold plus the vibration, it helps to stop this electric signaling into the brain. Now, if you're thinking about the signal coming from the nociceptors through the spinal cord and into the brain, basically it goes into what we call the pain brain. So that's where that brain decides whether or not it's pain or it's not pain. There's a way to address this, and Amy Baxter talks about this in her TED Talk. And I'm going to have a slide about her so that you can find that TED Talk. She talks about there's 3 aspects that we can try and control. So there's the physiological aspect, which is cold and vibration, but there's also the fear part, so that's the emotional part. And there's also, let's call it distraction, right? So it's decision making. So there's 3 things that we can try and use together when we have pain in order to make sure that we're modulating our response down or completely eliminating it. So in terms of distraction, it could be breath work. It could be a visual count. You're looking at something that's very specific so that you're trying to engage the mind. For example, and she gives this into her talk, if you look at the word response here at the very top of this slide, response, if you were to count the number of letters with holes in them, right? R, there's a hole. E, P, O, E, that's 5. As you're doing this, if you put cold on your pain spot and you're focusing like this is distraction, right? And you're also maybe doing some breath work and you're trying to mitigate the fear that you have. Maybe you do some gratefulness practice at the same time. All of a sudden, the pain shifts. So that's a pretty interesting way of looking at how to manage chronic pain. Other options to do this, and I mentioned breath work, there's all sorts of different breath techniques that you can use. 4-7-8, square breathing, inhale, exhale, where inhales is half the length of the exhale. There's longer, so there's inhale for 5, hold for 20, exhale for 30, for example, right? So all sorts of ways of playing with it. The lip fluttering, singing or humming a song, doing the lip flutters. So there are all sorts of ways that you can distract yourself from the pain, but through breath work and all sorts of other stress control techniques. Thermal contrast exposure, hot, cold, that's what we call the contrast exposure. The cold is really good, but if in some cases, it depends. Not everyone is the same, but and especially if it's an acute injury, please don't do hot, cold, because that's going to possibly make it really big in terms of inflammation. But if the injury has been there for a little bit, then the hot, cold can really yield some really positive results. Movement and exercise. Although we want to protect ourselves when we feel we have pain, we have to figure out how to play in that green zone, green meaning go zone. It's okay. We work within that little box and we move. Resistance training is huge as well. If we can reinforce our structure, then we are better equipped and we have increased capacity to deal with the pain and to decrease that pain response. Emotions, belief, and context also play a role. And then if we figure out how to generate those neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin, we could talk about love, we could talk about connection. That's also a way to help modulate the pain response. And there are more and more studies coming out on pain management, pain response modulation. The love one, I think, is a year old. So there's plenty. So if you are dealing with chronic pain and you're looking for various ways of managing it, I highly recommend following some of the key researchers. Huberman Lab, Andrew Huberman with his Huberman Lab podcast actually offers quite a lot of reviews of the literature regarding pain, and it's quite good. Talking about Huberman Lab, there's one of his, and this is one of the shorter ones, Huberman Lab Essentials. So it's one of the longer episodes that he's condensed in about 36 to 40 minutes. Control pain and heal faster. And there's also Amy Baxter. I've mentioned her earlier, in how to hack your brain when you're in pain. So all sorts of little tips for you to look into. Now, the reason we're here. Do a cold plunge, they said. It's good for you, they said. Well, yes, actually, it is. So who can benefit from cold exposure and how? Anyone can benefit from cold. Now, if you have blood circulation issues, reactions to cold, and by reactions to cold, I really mean something like an allergic reaction or some vasovagal reactions where you could be fainting because of cold. These are definitely things that you don't want to mess around with. Blood pressure issues, really high blood pressure, really low blood pressure. If you've had recent wounds, open wounds that are healing, or you've had recent surgery, you also want to get some type of medical clearance and making sure that you're discussing this with your medical team. How can you do cold exposure? There's all sorts of ways. You can do it at home. In fact, actually, today we're on day 16 of a 21-day cold exposure challenge that I'm offering. It's free, it's online. It's called the Cold Spark. So it's really to help spark a cold exposure practice for people who are complete novices to cold and who want to start developing a practice. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, using things that you have at home. So it's accessible, it's zero cost. So it's really easy to do. And then from there, and it's got breath work as well. So from there, you can build to go outside, and maybe you do other kinds of exposure too. Maybe it's a cold day, you just go in shorts and t-shirts outside for a few minutes, maybe a little bit more. But basically, you can do it at home, you can do it outside, you can do some dipping, and you can do my favorite, swimming. What is cold water? Everyone has a different perspective on what is cold. So it's very subjective. Under 24.5 degrees Celsius for triathlons, it's cold. A lot of organizers will tell you, ooh, you need a wetsuit. Well, maybe. Between 10 and 15 degrees is therapeutic temperature. So that's when you really feel some benefits in terms of analgesic effect of cold water. Under 8 degrees is my happy place, and many of the other people in the cold water swimming community all agree in terms of therapeutic benefits. That's where we're feeling it. And then between -1 and 5 degrees, that's what cold water actually is for ISA, International Ice Swimming Association, and the ratifications of ice miles, which is someone swimming an ice mile, which is just over 1.6 kilometers, in waters that are between -1 and 5 degrees. So as you can see, cold water, it varies per person. Now, what temperature is optimal for you is whatever you have on hand that's cold, and however long you can make it so that you can get a little bit of a chill. Effects, oh, actually, before I talk about this, I want to point something out here. You can see here, there's a picture of a group. This is the group that I was with, I think in January when we did the cold ocean outing at Kitsilano Beach. You can see in the group, there's all sorts of different ages, more women than men, but there are a few brave ones in there. But the ages in there ranged from 29 years old all the way to 72 years old. And someone had just gotten a 70-year-old in the group had just gotten a hip replacement, and that was her first time back. So everyone can benefit from this. I think the oldest person in our group is now 77 years old. So the effects of cold water on the endocrine system. So I've pulled this up and I've been looking at the various studies, and I will tell you this, there's a lot more that needs to be done in terms of the benefits of cold water and benefits on the endocrine system. Susanna Soberg is probably the one who has the most research on this, but in terms of performance, there's also, oh my goodness, I forget his name. He's at Stanford University, Craig Heller, Dr. Craig Heller. And he talks about how cooling yourself down in between sets, in between rounds of golf or basketball or whatever, it can actually help to improve your game just by cooling down. So if we're looking at cold water in general, dipping, swimming, the effects on the endocrine system, and we're talking about full body, and it could be a shower as well, or you go and you use your bathtub, you get norepinephrine that's increased by 200 to 500%. So reduced inflammation, analgesic pain reduction effect. You get increased focus, you're more alert, right? And then you have improved mood and energy. Dopamine, which is increased by about 250%, lasts about 2 to 4 hours. So basically it's like getting a hit of a drug. You get really high, you feel really good, but instead of then going down below your baseline and crashing and then slowly trying to get back up, you get this high and then slowly over 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6, 7 hours, you go back to where you were, where your baseline was. And over time, the more you do it, the more your baseline is actually a little higher and a little higher so that you feel great overall. So for the other endocrine system effect, endorphins. So we're talking about the body's natural painkillers and how you feel that cold water elation feeling. Decreased perception of pain. You get the mild euphoria going. You've got decreased stress. Life is pretty good when you're in cold water. You also get, when you start to get into you enter the cold water, you get that initial cold shock response. And that's the adrenaline and the cortisol being activated here. So the adrenaline is you walk in your cold tub, or you walk into a cold lake, cold ocean, and there's a little bit of a happening. And this is where breath work becomes really important. With time, you learn to just exhale through it. And then that cold shock response time slowly starts to go down and down. I think it'll always be there, but you can reduce it. So for the adrenaline and cortisol, you get your sympathetic system that ramps up. And then shortly after the cold shock response, usually if you're doing a regular practice, then your parasympathetic kind of kicks in, which is really odd, which is your rest and digest, which is, I say it's odd because you're in a stressful environment, but I'm telling you, you feel so good and so relaxed, and that's when you know it's time to get out. Cold water also helps with brown fat activation hormones. So basically, it's the thermogenesis pathways that are activated. So brown fat helps us in many ways. It also helps with it helps with the brain health, so that at night our brain works better at flushing the things that shouldn't be in the brain out, and a whole body works better. So it improves metabolic health. It improves your heat production, so that as you cold adapt, you increase your brown fat, and that's a good thing in our body. So overall, the effects of cold water on us, we're talking about alert, we're more resilient. Think about it. It takes guts to go into the cold, so we build that resilience. We're in a better mood, and we become better at managing pain. I mean, I put down pain tolerance, but we manage the pain better. The pain, it feels lower. And I will tell you, it feels like the cold is interrupting those electric signals. It's completely stopping that path. And so where I was going to the pain management clinic, those injections that I was getting, it was to stop that signaling. The cold water swimming does the same thing for me, except it lasts much longer. Those injections that I was getting would last maybe half an hour. That was it. And I went there for years. The differences between dipping and swimming. So if you were to start a practice of cold, let's say you do the 21-day challenge, a cold spark at home, and you're like, yes, I'm comfortable now. I know what to expect in terms of the cold exposure. I'm doing some breath work. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go and find a group, and I'm going to go and dip in open waters or swim in open cold waters. The difference between dipping and the swimming, well, in dipping, you kind of keep your thermal envelope around you. And you can wear extra clothing, toque, mitts, Now, when you're swimming, you can wear a wetsuit and be fully dressed, but I actually recommend that you try it with as little clothing as possible. That's why I wear a bikini. So I have as much skin exposed to the cold water as possible. So as you're swimming, so if I'm swimming from crawl, I'm moving through the water, which means my thermal envelope, it gets stripped, especially when my arms are coming out of the water. If there's wind, I'm moving and there's wind, I get really cold. So you do get a lot colder when there's wind. When you're exhaling in the water is more dense than air, so then you get a good workout for your lungs. And because the cold water is cooling you down, you don't overheat, and therefore there's not much inflammation happening in the cardiovascular system, which means you can push harder, which will translate into day-to-day benefits, right? So that you will have better breathing outside of the water, your heart will be stronger, and it really does translate into day-to-day benefits. Now, this next reason is the reason why I much prefer swimming to dipping, personal. But the swimming, sorry about this, the swimming actually deactivates the nervous system. Let me turn this down. So when you're in water, you have buoyancy. You don't have gravity. So it's different. So you can relax in the water. It's a little bit like going back to Mother Earth's womb, right? Or your mother's room. You're just floating. Everything is deactivated from a nervous system point of view. And you can do a full nervous system reset. I like to put my face, especially in the water, so I do more from crawl, because I always feel like whenever the cold water hits me right here in between the eyes, I can feel my whole body relax. And that is why swimming for me is better than dipping, because of this whole nervous system relaxation state. Improve range of motion through buoyancy. If you have a shoulder problem, you can't really move it on land. If you go in the water, all of a sudden you can move it. And so in terms of physiotherapy, rehabilitation, this is much better. You can move it, you can do your exercises in the water. Water therapy is absolutely incredible. Cold water is like doubling up or stacking up on all of those benefits. And I mentioned working out without increasing your body temperature, and performance discussion will be coming in an upcoming webinar. So I'm 56, I'm 55 years old. And I'm mentioning this because I'm thinking of specific races that I've done in the last few years, but there's one that I did at Bowen Island. It was a 1.5K ocean swim. I can't remember my final time, 22 or 24 minutes. It doesn't really matter. But when I was 26 years old, I participated in a Masters national competition. So that's throughout Canada in Montreal. And I came in second woman overall with a time of 20:09, I think it was. But basically, if I were to take my time from a 25-meter pool, 1,500 meters, and I compare it to my time when I was 52 years old, in ocean with currents, cold temperature, no walls for pushing off of, currents, winds, waves, people around me. My times were pretty much equivalent, which means I'm getting faster as I'm getting older. And I remember from 2014 to 2020, I couldn't even swim because of the car accident I was in and the pain that I was in. Zero swimming, zero. And so how on earth can I be all of a sudden performing like this? It's the cold. It's the cold water swimming I've been doing. I've been doing sprints as well in the water, which I'll talk about in another webinar. But just please know that we should not be settling for anything less than here we are. We can still improve. We can still improve no matter what. And we can look at our life in different ways and different aspects. Yes, we can always improve a part of our life. It's not because we have pain today that it has to continue tomorrow. So why cold water swimming? Well, it's healing, first of all. And perhaps to come back to Amy Baxter, maybe it's a combination of cold and vibration. As water creates this hydrostatic pressure on our skin, it helps all of the fluids to circulate better. But maybe there's a certain vibration. I don't know. And maybe, just maybe, our whole body is exposed during that time as we're swimming to this combination of cold and vibration, which means that it helps to eliminate the pain. Cold water swimming, believe it or not, is fun, especially when you do it with other people. And of course, you get the whole well-being thing with the dopamine and the serotonin, but you get to connect with your environment outside. You get to connect with yourself, and you get to connect with other people around you. For safety measures, please, if you're going to go for dipping or swimming in open waters, please always be with other people who know the area, especially if you're going there for the first time, who can coach you, who help you out. That's why I offer the free monthly ocean outing at Kitsilano, so that it's in a safe environment and people can try it. Of course, there's a performance aspect to the cold water swimming, but also bragging rights. And by bragging rights, I really mean in the middle of winter, you go out, you expose yourself to the cold, that's bragging rights enough. That's especially if you're dealing with chronic pain and you've got a bit of a hard time in terms of how the mood is. And you go out there and it's like, you know what? Good pat on the back. Absolutely. So I'm going to run through this a little bit more, like not super in detail, but developing a cold water swimming practice, it's not that complicated. It really, really isn't. So if it's your first time in the water, now this is me in Deep Cove, and this was taken a few weeks ago so that you can see there's some snow on the mountains in the back. It's not, I mean, I'm doing this now, but I had to start somewhere. So start low and go slow in terms of your progression. Build your confidence, and your confidence in the water is also going to translate into confidence on land and confidence in your body, because that's also something with chronic pain. We start to hesitate. Can I really do this? Is my body going to allow me to do that? And as we gain confidence in the water, we gain confidence outside the water. If you're going to go in the water, do your homework. Basically do the preparatory research. What are you going to do for your pre-swim? What are you going to do after your swim? How are you going to warm up? What are you bringing with you? What's going to be your process? Go with other more experienced people during the exposure. Expect some type of cold shock response and make sure you're ready to breathe through it. Use long exhales and limit your time and exposure so that you gradually increase, but you take your time. There's no rush there. It's your own practice. You get out, you dry yourself, you put warm clothes. That has to be pretty fast. As soon as you're out of the cold water, it has to be really quick. So that's why I wear a bikini, because it's just one string I remove, as opposed to the one-piece bathing suit I have to wiggle myself out of. Men, not a problem. It's just trunks, right? You can just remove it. But for women, it's best to have a two-piece, and definitely not a sports top, because the one that you have to wiggle over your head, that's not going to work. Take it from experience. And warming up strategies, you warm up your hands, your feet. You're dry as well. Drink some tea, something hot. And when you're warming up, also make sure that you go slow. And there's more on those strategies in the resources that I have online on the Coolest Journey YouTube channel. So more experienced dippers and swimmers will continue to build their confidence and progress, but it's usually about cold adaptation, and the more experienced people can stay a lot longer. So don't think that you can do 20 minutes right off the bat. I remember talking to someone who told me, but it looked so easy when you and the other two people went in, and she went in and she had that huge cold shock response, and she could barely stay a minute. So you have to build it slowly. And for those who are more experienced, then maybe you're a more experienced dipper. That's okay. Maybe you want to go from dipping to swimming. That's okay. Maybe you just want to continue dipping. You just want to do whatever you want to do in the water. As long as you're exposing yourself to cold, you get the benefits. So your own goals. Do you want to socialize? Do you want to be part of a community? Do you just want a health and well-being reboot? Do you want to connect with nature? Maybe you want to complete some challenges. So that's why I've got ISA over there. And the picture at the bottom on the right is one that I took at the Memphre Games. So basically, it's like a 25-meter pool in the middle of Memphremagog Lake in Newport, Vermont. And I think we were about 180 swimmers partaking in that competition. And it's fun. You meet other crazy people. And I say crazy in a good sense, because we're all doing this because we feel great. The equipment that you need, bathing suit. Start with a bathing suit. If you're putting your head under, make sure you have some very, very good ear protection. So I recommend the silicone earplugs from Max. If you're more interested in other pieces of equipment, I highly recommend you go to my website, thecoolestjourney.com. Click on shop, and I have a whole list of items that you can pick up from Amazon in terms of getting you ready for a cold water swimming practice. Different strokes, different folks, whatever you want to do in the water goes. I mean, whether you want to do a synchro leg up like you see me doing here, or you want to do some front crawl, back crawl, head up breaststroke, water running, aqua fitness, whatever you want to do, handstands, it's all good. Snorkeling is actually also another really good one. For a number of reasons, especially if you have some jaw pain that's consistent. The biting on the mouthpiece of the snorkel can actually help you deal with this chronic pain. This is exactly what I did. My jaw locked after my car accident, exactly 3 months after. And I think it was locked for about 4 months. Then I went snorkeling in Hawaii, and bam, the pain was gone. And my physiotherapist thought I was actually brilliant. She was telling me, oh, you figured it out. It's just by holding the contraction, you can get rid of that pain. Who knew? But anyway, basically, start low, go slow. Start with low, like a minute or 2 minutes in the water, and then gradually increase it to whatever is comfortable to you. What to expect? Feeling of euphoria. You'll be colder afterwards. You'll have a little bit of a feeling of hypothermic. That's okay. That's called after drop. You have to learn about how your body's going to react to the cold. Everyone is different. So you have to learn how you're going to be rewarming. And what your boundaries are as well. And also just remember, colder the air, the colder the water, the colder the winds, stronger the winds, the less time you want to be in the water. Play it safe. But most of all, what you can expect is feeling less pain, and often feeling no pain for hours. Mm-hmm. If you're going out, make sure you assess a go, no-go situation. There's a whole list of things for you here to consider. Common mistakes to avoid. Don't be cold before you get in the water. That's actually going to be counterproductive. You're going to get way too cold, and the after drop is going to be the pits. Don't stay in the water too long or too short of a time either. During the polar bear plunge on January 1st, we often see people running into the water and then screaming and getting back out. And I keep wanting to tell them, no, please, just stay in the water a little longer. Stay in the water a minute, 2 minutes, so that cold shock response has a time to run through its course. You exhale through it. Your body calms down. And so that you're teaching your body that in times of stress, you can control the reaction by breathing through it. So basically, you're shifting your whole central nervous system from sympathetic mode to parasympathetic mode, from that fight or flight to, oh, okay, yeah, we can rest. We're good here. We're okay. And that you can do. And it takes, usually it's about 2 minutes, but you know, those polar bear plunge people often are just in and out. And if you know any, or maybe you do it, I highly recommend try 2 minutes. Another mistake to avoid is to not be too fixed with what you want to do. If you're outside, conditions will change. You have to be able to adapt. And that is actually another really good thing about a cold water swimming practice or dipping, is that ability that we gain to adapt to various conditions. That also translates in our day-to-day life, so that we can adapt to various conditions. We have that extra capacity to deal with all of these things. And honestly, from a chronic pain management point of view, it's a little bit like saying, I know I've got pain. This too shall pass. You know, this is only temporary. I'm going to be okay. And that is a big thing. Chronic pain management blueprint. I want to spend just a little bit of time here because I use this, and I've been told many times that I should offer some type of spreadsheet on the website, right? So, and this was even before I launched my business. And this is something that I picked up from one of the neurologists that I saw possibly 20 years ago. What she told me is, I have to think of a plan, whether it's for pain management or it's for injury management or it's for whatever is happening in your life. You have to think about different categories that all come together to create a holistic plan. Now, I was telling her, well, I kind of know what to do. And she was like, don't trust your memory. It's not going to work. When you're going to be in pain or something's going to happen, you're going to forget. And my goodness, she was right. In the middle of a migraine, you think I could think about, oh yeah, I have to keep myself cool and I have to take these anti-inflammatory, I wouldn't even remember. So there's something to be said about having it in writing, printed, right? Or maybe it's handwritten, however you want to do it, whatever way you organize yourself, but having it printed down as a resource that you can consult on paper or otherwise. Maybe you give it to someone else to give to you when you're in need. Whatever works. And this plan works for me, but maybe you have different categories, and maybe it's something that you want to develop and get some of your medical team members to look at, and maybe they want to add some things, and keep a log as to what works and what doesn't work for you. So I'm going to give you some of the sample categories that I have in my spreadsheet. Nutrition, hydration. So what is it that I'm doing from a nutrition, hydration? Whole food, plant-based meal is tops. So basically vegan diet, top allergen free. So it's anti-inflammatory. And I need to make sure that I get at least 2 liters of water per day. For me, that's what works. I'm just very dehydrated. I swim in ocean water, maybe that's why. But basically, that's a key part of my nutrition segment, as well as, in my case, 80 grams to 100 grams of protein. So I want to make sure I get enough protein. I want to make sure I get a number of seeds as well, like hemp hearts, flax seeds, and chia seeds in my diet. I also want to make sure that I get prunes and almonds. And I found out not that long ago that I can do some almonds. I'm allergic to nuts. But basically, it's for my bone health. It's for anti-inflammatory purposes. There's all sorts of things in this plan that come together. Supplementation, maybe you take omega-3, B12, maybe you take magnesium, maybe you take some zinc. Whatever works for you in terms of helping you with the pain, it's important here. Healing foods, ginger, turmeric, black pepper, right? Think TCM and Ayurvedic medicine. Herbs, actually, oregano, all sorts of other things that could be working for you. Pharma, if you're using any kind of pharmaceuticals to help you, then put them in there. Anti-inflammatories, painkillers. Maybe you've got other things that you've tried. They work, but not really. But keep track of them. Make sure it's in your plan. Therapies. So I'm listing all of the different categories here in the spreadsheet. So therapies, I've tried a lot of therapies, but these are just a few. Physio, I've had ultrasound, shockwave therapy done. I've had a number of different things. So if you have some questions about that, you can ask me at the end. Kinesiology, massage, acupuncture, contrast therapy, hot, cold. Hyperbaric chamber, huge game changer for me as well there. And we could talk about this more. In Canada, the soft wall chambers are illegal to purchase now, but they weren't before 2019. So, and you could go to a clinic to get this done in a hard shell, so basically in a metal part, but HBOT can be very, very useful. It helps to increase the oxygen percentage in our tissues, in all of our tissues. So it really helps with healing. Movement. It's so critical to have movement, even if you can just walk a few steps, do it many, many times a day, so that slowly but surely you increase that, right? Resistance training, yoga, Pilates, dance, whatever gets us moving is good. Sleep and recovery, getting really good sleep is critical for anyone in pain. Now, if you've had some type of traumatic brain injury, this is well known. Sleep patterns are disturbed, architecture, you name it, like we get about 3 or 4 hours of sleep per night, which is my issue. Still working on it, but getting better. But, it's not something that's easy to fix. And so there's all sorts of, you can do CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. You could use hemp oil. You can use all sorts of different things, right? But whatever works for you, just keep track of it in your little plan. Maybe you do some 18 minutes power naps. Maybe you do meditation, mini pauses during your day so that your nervous system knows that you're putting the brakes on during the day, and then you start over again, putting the brakes on and then starting over again. Energy therapy is key. So for me, what made a huge difference, and if I had another car accident, which I really don't want to, but the number one thing I would do, cold water every single day, as many times as I can. The second thing, making sure I continue on my anti-inflammatory diet, that I drink all of my water, and that I take the supplements that I'm taking. But number 3 is PEMF, along with the HBOT. PEMF is key for me. And initially, so I started PEMF in, I think it was 2016. It brought my pain level from about an 8-9 to about 6 to 8. So it made it easier for me to manage my pain. But then when I added the cold water, poof, many days now I'm at almost 1 to 2, which is unbelievable. So you want to make sure you keep track of this, but the energy therapy is really something that not enough people are using. And some of it is pretty simple, like just the tapping work that we can do, right? So there's all sorts of resources online. There's Brad Yates, who has a fabulous website and a number of short videos that are very easy to follow. There's also Donna Eden, who is one of the most known people who talked about energy medicine even 30 years ago. Different ways of doing it. PBM is photo biomodulation, so that's with light, all sorts of different things. Finally, environmental remediation was on my list because I need to make sure that my air, my water were purified. All the products that I have in my home are unscented and I don't react to them. There's limited or zero mold exposure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is how you can put your plan for yourself together. And I'm going like this, but really it would be like on a spreadsheet. You have your different categories and then you're listing everything under each category. And that way you customize it for yourself and you become the CEO of your own health. And the medical team, it reports to you and everything goes into that. So I hope this helps. A lot of people have been asking me how to create their own blueprint following how I explain this. So I hope this helps you. One more thing. I want to thank you for being with me today. And I'm Coach Hélène, in case you forgot, from the Coolest Journey. Some of the things that I offer, if you want to continue your journey with me, I have free monthly ocean outings at Kitsilano Beach in Vancouver on the first Saturday of the month, and you can register through Eventbrite. Now, I only do them from October to May because in the summer months, the water is warm enough for anyone to go in. They don't need the guidance as much. So I only do it in the colder months. I also offer some free webinars to help with increased awareness of the cold water benefits. And I've got some upcoming in-person 2-day and 5-day reboots, and I'm working on some more for the fall of 2026 and next year, 2027. I've got some online course offerings. I've got an open water swimming course coming up it's a 4-week course, and then a chronic pain management course. That's going to be 12 weeks. That one is going to be offered in the fall. I'm probably going to be offering a second part to this chronic pain management webinar. So do stay tuned. And yeah, I hope to see you again for this. And then there's also my podcast, The Coolest Journey. I get all sorts of fabulous guests on that podcast. The latest one is actually Montreal's ice surfer, Orion Miller. An incredible interview. I've also interviewed Tom Heyerdahl from Ottawa about his ice swimming. So you can, pick and choose. I've interviewed Martin Gibala as well, who talks about interval training or sprint interval training as well. So there's a lot. So the podcast is all about people sharing their coolest journey, literally and figuratively. And finally, that Cold Spark 21-day challenge is online right now. It's happening. You can follow me as we're going along. And yeah, it's easily done from home, zero cost, accessible, and everything. So I want to thank you for being with me today. Now I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to be opening the session for Q&A. So I want to thank everyone for attending and I wish you all the best with your cold water swimming journey.